Hey guys, well, welcome back. We are in the basement workshop, and that's probably Brian right there. It sure was. Brian and I have been going back and forth on governors for a few weeks now, and he rebuilt one on his channel. His channel name is Brian H, and he did a fantastic job. He actually sent me a piece for mine, because he ordered a rebuild kit from Steiner, but he sent me this, you can call it a cam or dog leg, because mine was badly worn, but this one is like brand new. So I just cleaned it up and reinstalled it on the shaft that goes from the governor over to the carburetor, and this tab aligns with the throttle shaft and the carburetor. So we'll get to this later though. But this video is all about reassembling the governor for an H through 450 series, I believe. So I did some things kind of sporadically throughout the week here as I was getting parts. I would start assembling things, pressing bearings onto shafts and gears onto shafts and things like that. So we will kind of splice into areas where I was installing bearings and stuff onto different things. But let's get started with reassembly. The first thing that we want to do with these governors is install the, what do I want to call this, rock shaft and rocker. In order to do that, we have a, well, there's a there's a shaft with a hollowed out portion of it, and that's where the bearing system and everything rides and glides through on the main shaft inside the governor. But the first thing we want to do is there's a circlip that goes on to this shaft. There's a little groove into this shaft, and there's a circlip that goes on there that acts as a stop as you slide this into the governor case. So I'm going to get this installed onto the shaft. These can be kind of tricky sometimes. There we go. So we've got the circlip on our shaft. Now we're going to insert the shaft into the governor, and at the same time, oops, sorry about that, we're going to install the rock shaft that goes in here, or the rocker arm. So need some grease. I have a little bit of assembly lube here. Put some assembly lube onto the shaft. I'm just going to get it started. Put some in the journal there. And before I keep going, I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube onto the needle bearings that are inside here. And these are new needle bearings. We did press new needle bearings into the rocker arm. There we go. Get everything aligned. Let's make sure that there's a step machined into that shaft, and the taller portion of the step has to go up. So step goes down towards the bottom, and we'll drive this the rest of the way home. Till it's seated on that circlip. Check the rotation and the fitment of the rocker arm. So it will articulate like such. Okay, that's the first thing we want to do. Second thing that we want to do is, where did I put that? Okay, well, one of the things I wanted to talk about is this thrust bearing and this thrust washer. These items, now factory, this would have a steel washer, a hardened steel washer here, and mine had some pretty significant grooves worn into both sides, which tells me one thing. This governor had been in and repaired at one point and serviced, because it should only have grooves worn into one side, because this side contacts this collar as it slides up and down on the main shaft. This side contacts the weights as they articulate. If I can quickly throw some stuff together here. Oop, too much, too far. Okay, as this thrust bearing moves in and out, and this collar moves in and out, it contacts, okay, what do we got going on here? I think I got to install both of them at the same time. Okay, otherwise we get a binding issue. Okay, you'll see the thrust washer in here contacts the arms of the weights, and as this moves in and out, it pushes on that thrust washer, which pushes on this collar sleeve, which pushes on the bearing, which pushes on the pins for the rock shaft or the rocker arm inside here, if that makes sense. Ooh, that's going to be beautiful. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to take this. Actually, we can leave these. I assembled the bearing on the main shaft and the gear at Rudy's. We used the arbor press to press everything together. And as I mentioned before in the modifications and repair video that I did for the governor, I made new pins for the weights out of shoulder bolts. I just ground the heads round, smoothed everything out, cut the threads off, and then drilled a hole for a cotter pin. I also had to drill and install bushings into the weights. So let's go ahead and assemble this portion into the main shaft. That way we have everything ready to go. I did weigh each weight by themselves. This weight is 130.7 grams. This is 131.3, so there's a difference of 0.6 grams, so about a half a gram between the two. However, when I weighed the pins, the weights, the washers that I'm putting on the outside of the pin underneath the cotter pin, all together, they were both 146 grams. So we're right on the money. I'm not going to worry about any differences in the weights because it's being taken up in the weight of all of the accessory items like the pin, the washer, and the cotter pin. So we're at 146 grams for each of them. Let's get this portion assembled and we'll move on. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is insert the weight into the main shaft, install the pin, insert the washer onto the pin, and then we'll put our cotter pin through the pin itself. Okay. Just want to make sure there's no interference there. Okay, let's move on to the other side. Now I'm going to set things up opposite so the heads of the pins are opposite each other on this rotating assembly. Okay. Alright, we'll go ahead and bend these cotter pins and then we'll install the main shaft assembly into, well, fully assembled it would go thrust washer and then thrust bearing and collar. Or thrust sleeve and thrust bearing, just like that. That would be a full assembly. But let's get the cotter pins folded over and we'll keep moving. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube into the bushing that's in the back of the housing here. Oop. There we go. Now I can insert this assembly. Now with the new pins that I made, it has to be just right in order to slide in there. Oh shoot, we forgot something. Always be sure you're ready to go before you start inserting things. And we have to find the right angle to get it out of there. There we go. Now, okay, thrust washer goes first. Onto the shaft. And then we'll put a little bit of assembly lube inside the collar. Which goes onto the shaft like such. Okay. Now we can send it in. There we go. Now we're making some headway. So as the governor articulates, these bearings are going to fly, or as the governor spins, these bearings are going to fly out, and you can see that it pushes against that arm. Just like that. Okay, now we can move on to the linkage that comes through the back side. I've already installed a new seal here. We'll put a little bit of assembly lube on the seal itself. That way it's ready to accept. This inserts from the back side. All the way through to the front and articulates like such. Ooh, that's very nice. No play at all whatsoever. I like that. Okay. Then we have, let's see, where is it? This piece here and your spring. And where is my key? There it is. This small woodruff key goes into the shaft. We can rotate it up to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. Squeeze it into place with the pliers. Very, very dirty pliers. Let's clean that off before we insert it into there, like such. Okay. Now I am going to install the spring on here. Actually, I should have done it. That's okay. We'll make it work. Install this onto the shaft. Like such. Okay. Install the spring onto the mechanism here, like such. Tighten down this 7/16 bolt. It's just a pinch bolt essentially to tighten the articulating arm onto the shaft. Like such. So as the governor articulates up and down, it moves back and forth here. Just like that. Everything's moving as it's supposed to. That's going to be difficult. I probably should have done that before we installed that arm. I think I'm going to have to do that. This is my first, not my first go around with a governor, but when you work on so many different types of tractors, sometimes you refresh your memory as you're putting stuff back together. And in order to get this linkage and pin installed appropriately with the cotter pin in place, I think I'm going to have to, it's going to be a lot easier to do it without this in place. So let's do that and we'll move forward. Okay, well, hindsight's 20/20. The best way to do this is to assemble this rod on the rock shaft or the rocker arm as you insert it into the case. because you have to install this pin from the back side, meaning in here from the back side through the front, and then install your cotter pin. So I'm going to do that while this is in the case as best I can without knocking the camera and everything else over. Okay. Gotta flip this around, then install the pin, which is not easy at all, from the back side. And my hands are getting in the way, I'm sorry about that, but okay. Come on now, work with me here. I know you guys can't see anything, but if it's any consolation, neither can I. I'm going off of feel. It's really not easy to get in here. Oh boy. I should have done this outside of the unit, of the housing. Now everything's covered in assembly lube, which makes things even more of a challenge. Just when you thought you guys were gonna get a good, clean assembly video and... Okay, I'm turning the camera off. Okay, third time's a charm. You can see we've got the linkage attached. We have the cotter pin in place. Let's go ahead and do this again. Install this main shaft. Now we have to install the lever from the back side again. And the reason we had to take the lever out is because you can't get the main shaft out with having the lever in place. Sorry, had to find my key. Key goes in. Set the key in place. Like such. Install the rocker arm. I don't think I have the key evened out here. Okay. That's probably Brian texting me wondering what's taking so long. Trying, Brian. I'm trying. Okay. We'll go ahead and tighten that bolt again, and we'll move up to the top portion of the governor. Okay, so we've got our gasket in place. I put some high tack on there to keep everything sealed and hopefully keep it from leaking too much. Install our tower. Install the 2 bolts that hold the tower in place. These are going to be temporary bolts for me. I'm going to replace them with some grade 8 hardware because I like to be fancy. Okay. That's good enough for now. We can snug everything up later when we get it all put together and finished. Okay. So now Our linkage moves freely. Everything is good there. Now we have to move forward to the crossover tube. There's a double plate and seal system for that. And our pin and cotter pin for that system. Let's keep moving. Okay, people tend to get this confused sometimes. I've got some more high tack on there, but it goes gasket first. I'm going to put a little bit more high tack on the other side of this gasket. The only thing I don't like about high tack is it's really, really stringy stuff, so you got to kind of be careful with it, otherwise it can end up everywhere, just like anti-seize. Don't need much, just enough to coat the surface. Okay. Then we install our flat plate. That goes on there. Then there's a felt dust seal and a cupped plate. So I'm going to insert the cupped plate onto the end of the governor crossover tube. Insert the felt. And it's kind of a tricky ordeal to get everything together and aligned. Just like such. I have to go grab some flat washers. I thought I was ready. Let me grab some flat washers for this and we'll come back before we put the bolts in. Okay, we've got our bolts in place. I'm not going to tighten these right now because this is adjustable. This system is adjustable because we have to align it with the carburetor. So we're going to leave these loose for now. But since we're there, we can now install our gasket, install our cover plate. And again, I'm not going to seal this up because we don't know if we have to make adjustments to it. But for the sake of our video, we're not done yet, just with this cover plate. But I'm just going to loosely install the bolts here. The rest of it I'm not taking apart. The tower and everything, that can remain sealed. There we go. Man, that would look pretty cool with some chrome bolts, but we're not going to do that. The last piece that I'm going to connect is going to be this linkage with this dog leg. Okay, we'll install our pin. Uh-oh. Well, now it's down inside there. See, nothing can go right. Okay, well, after fighting and dropping the pin inside there and then dropping the cotter pin inside there, we've got the cover back off. But I wanted to take it back off anyways to show you guys the finished product inside. But we have the pin installed with the cotter pin inside there. That's the orientation of the dog leg and the... Here, I gotta set the camera down and tilt things so you can see. Orientation of the dog leg and the clevis that mounts to that linkage. See how that operates? Okay. So, the way the governor operates, when you pull back on the lever, it pushes the operation arm down and stretches that spring, right? And that puts more tension on the bearing, the thrust bearing, which pushes the weights closed, which allows the engine to spin faster. Okay, when I pull back on it, it returns the engine to idle and allows the fly weights to fly out and slow down, if that makes sense. So, as we articulate this arm, I'll show you on the other end, on the carburetor end. As we articulate this arm, it rotates this tab in the throttle shaft of the carburetor, opens and closes the butterfly of the carburetor, if that makes sense. So idle would be this way, down on this lever, and then full throttle would be wide open. No, backwards. Full throttle is down, idle is wide open. Or, geez, it's getting late. I've been working on this for at least 2 hours now. This is not a project that takes very little time. Wide open throttle is down or back with the hand lever. Return to idle is up on the governor arm and clockwise on the throttle linkage. Wide open throttle, idle. Okay? So we'll check the spinning of the governor here. Everything spins great. There's no issues with anything hitting inside here. Just double check. There's a very small amount of room . I think I'm going to bend these cotter pins just a little bit to give myself a little bit more room. But I can see why International would go with pressed pins, just because there's very little room inside here. But all you have to do is check things over, make sure you have enough clearance, rotate things around like your pins, and make sure everything clears as it's supposed to. Yep, I think I'm going to adjust these pins just a little bit more, the cotter pins that is. And then we'll be all done. Okay. Okay, well, that's going to conclude the governor reassembly video. It didn't quite go as planned, but you know, I haven't had one of these governors apart since I did the H project, so that was 4 years ago now that we took that apart and got it back together. And sometimes a guy just has to refresh his memory in the order of operations. But really quickly, I just wanted to go through the parts that we replaced in here with new. This is the front main bearing, the 2 needle bearings that go on the rock shaft. In here, I used a Koyo KOYO B88 for the needle bearings. This is a 6305 NC. Let me double check the package here. 6305 NC or NRC3. 6305 NRC3 is the bearing that we used for the front main. Make sure that you order it with the snap ring groove. Koyo B88 needle bearings. This is an ST262, I believe, bearing for the rear of the main shaft. Or I'm sorry, for the thrust bearing. And then it's a SKF 4984 for the seal on the back side of the housing for the main shaft. I also have 2 plugs on mine. This one here is a 9/16 plug, and this is a 5/8, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that's where we're sitting. The governor is done. We shouldn't have to adjust it much, if at all, because I didn't take this adjustment nut off, nor did I adjust any of the linkage or the set bolts inside here. We may still have to play with it. That's why I'm not going to put sealant on this gasket yet. So we won't obviously be able to do anything there until we get it on the tractor, but we're a long ways from that. So that's going to do it for this video. I'm sorry for the back and forth and taking things apart and putting it back together, but sometimes that's just how it goes. You know, I do things on the fly. I don't pre-plan as much as I probably should, but quite frankly, I just don't have as much time as I should have, or I want to have, to put out step by step videos. It takes sometimes 2 or 3 times taking things apart, putting them back together to figure out the best and quickest way to do things. So here we are. We got it done. It was crude, but hopefully this helps you guys in your governor repair and rebuild videos. They're really not that bad. There's just a lot of small wear points in these governors, which I covered in the previous video we did for this project. So that's going to do it, though. Thanks for watching. Thanks for wrenching with us, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.